Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to do a video on adding fractions, and we're starting this in our grade 7 curriculum. So to go through the process, we're just going to look at a few examples and kind of talk about the steps that we kind of see all the time. So for the first one, we have 1/2 plus 2/5. Now, to add or subtract fractions, we know that the first thing we need is a common denominator. That means a denominator that is both a multiple of 2 and a multiple of 5. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and search that out first. I'll even write it out. So step 1, find a common denominator. This is going to carry you through to high school math, university math. This is something you absolutely need to find comfort in because it's going to be something you see for a long, long time. So for 2 and 5, we're looking for the number. We look for any number that is a multiple of 2 and a 5, but as you get more comfortable and more efficient at these kinds of questions, we're going to look for the smallest number that is a multiple of 2 and a 5. Now, to do that, what I recommend is doing a list of the multiples of both numbers. It's quick and easy, doesn't take long, and it really does get the job done quick. Now, as you get more used to it, the numbers will hop in your head a lot faster, but for now, let's go ahead and list those out. So the multiples of 2 are clearly 2, 6, 4, 6, 8, 10, so on and so forth. And the multiples of 5 are 5, 10, 15, and so on and so forth. And you'll notice that 10 is the first number that appears in both lists, right? This is really the idea of the least common multiple, is the smallest common multiple of both. I made a video about this earlier on if you want to watch that one. It's just a short video. But in any case, what we have here is our common denominator, okay? That's exactly what we're going to use as our common denominator. We're going to use 10, okay? So now what we want to do is we want to rewrite both of these fractions with the denominator of 10. But we still want them to be equivalent fractions. We don't want to change the fractions altogether. We want them to be equivalent fractions with our new denominator of 10, okay? So I'll write that out as well. Step 2 is to write out equivalent fractions. Write out equivalent fractions with the common denominator, right? We now have our common denominator. And so all we have to think is 5 times what brings us to our new denominator of 10? Well, that's 5 times 2. And so to keep the fractions equivalent, we multiply the numerator by the same amount. Okay, we do the same thing on top and on bottom. And so 2 times 2 gives us 4/10, okay? Now, likewise to 1/2, 2 times what brings us to 10? Well, that's 2 times 5. And so we do the same thing on top to keep the fraction equivalent, and 1 times 5 clearly gives us 5/10. Now that we have our common denominator, you'll notice that both fractions are tenths. We can naturally even read these out using the language that we always use as 5/10 plus 4/10 that naturally writes itself as 9/10. Okay, we're no longer adding apples and oranges, we're adding apples and apples, or oranges and oranges. We're adding the same denominator worth of fractions. And so we get our solution to 9/10. Okay? Same idea here. Example 2, we're going to do the same 2 steps. Find the common denominator first, write out the equivalent fractions with that common denominator, and then we can add them together. And so for 10 and 15, what will our common denominator be? If that number pops in your head, by all means go ahead and write it out. If not, we can make the list of multiples, and I highly recommend, as the numbers get messier and messier, these lists of multiples, excuse me, will come in handy, okay? So we have 10 and 15, so the multiples of 10 are 10, 20, 30. You see, it doesn't take very long, right? And the multiples of 15 are 15, 30, 45, And you'll notice quickly enough that 30 is the first number to appear in both lists, right? There would be more that would appear in both lists, but they would be bigger and bigger, which would make our jobs harder and harder. And so let's stick with the least common multiple, or smallest number that is the multiple of both denominators, which is 30. And so step 1, find a common denominator, that's done. Step 2, write out equivalent fractions with their common denominator. And so now we want equivalent fractions, and so we think to ourselves, 15 times what brings us to 30? Clearly that's 15 times 2, and so to keep the fractions equivalent, we do the same thing to the numerator, and 4 times 2 gives us 8/30. Likewise to the 10, 10 times what brings us to 30? That's 10 times 3, even if that takes up a bit too much time. If you've gone through the passive of writing out the list of multiples, right? 10 times 3 gets the third number, and 15 times 2 gets us the second number, right? The list kind of gives you the multiples that we have to use to get the equivalent fractions. And so we multiply the denominator by 3, and so we multiply the numerator by 3 as well to keep the fractions equivalent. And now we'll get 21/30 plus 8/30, and we have our common denominator, and so naturally we can add our fractions together. So 21/30 plus 8/30 give us a sum of 29/30, and that's it. Okay, so again, 2 steps, always get your common denominators. Please don't make a mistake of, one common mistake is adding the denominators together at the end, right? So 21 plus 8 is 29. We do not add 30s together to make 60ths, right? We have 21/30 plus 8/30 that give us 29/30, and that's it, okay? I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any comments, suggestions, please do let me know. Any requests for future videos are always appreciated, and thanks for watching.